The 11th of June 2024 dawned with a deceptive normalcy upon the quaintly named Boulder Creek, nestled within the shadowed folds of California. In the humble abode he shared with his aged mother, Lucas, a man of 34 years whose livelihood was entwined with the verdant tapestry of the wilderness, prepared for a sojourn he deemed trifling. A mere 3 hours amidst the towering sentinels of Big Basin Redwoods State Park. For Lucas, the sylvan depths were not a mere diversion, they were an intrinsic part of his very essence. His daily toil involved navigating the recovering woodlands, still bearing the cicatrices of the infernal CZU lightning complex fire of 2020, granting him a familiarity with the terrain that bordered on the preternatural. That particular morn, however, held a subtle tremor of novelty, for Lucas intended to chart a path previously untrodden. His accoutrements were sparse, a testament to his conviction of a swift return: stout hiking breeches, well-worn boots, a brimmed hat to ward off the encroaching sun, a pocket-sized illuminator, and his ever-reliable Leatherman tool. As he moved with practiced ease within the familiar confines of the kitchen, his mother, her face etched with the gentle concern of age, reminded him of the familial convocation planned for Father's Day. Lucas, with a mirthless chuckle that belied a burgeoning hubris, assured her of his prompt return. Ordinarily, Lucas possessed a meticulous nature when it came to his woodland excursions, each item scrutinized, each contingency considered. Yet, on this fateful day, a creeping overconfidence, born from years spent traversing these very trails since his youth and his current occupation within the fire-scarred domain, lulled him into a perilous complacency. What dread consequence could possibly arise from a mere 3-hour ramble? His thoughts echoed, oblivious to the profound and unsettling metamorphosis the forest had undergone in the wake of the consuming flames. The conflagration of 2020 had been an apocalyptic event, a ravenous entity that devoured approximately 97% of Big Basin's ancient grandeur. 4 years hence, a meager 24% offered tentative signs of resurgence, a skeletal framework draped with a fragile veil of new growth. Lucas piloted his vehicle to the park's periphery, the air still carrying the phantom scent of char and decay. He parked with a casual disregard for the latent malevolence of the place and set forth upon a trail etched into his memory, a path he had trod countless times under the benevolent gaze of verdant giants. Yet, after a scant hour, a disquieting unease began to coil within him, a serpent of doubt in the sun-dappled glade. The familiar markers, those reassuring sentinels of the known path, were absent, swallowed by the altered reality. The trees he had once used as steadfast landmarks were now either blackened specters reaching towards a vacant sky or bore an aspect so alien as to be utterly unrecognizable. Soon, a chilling realization, like the icy tendrils of a subterranean horror, began to grip Lucas's sanity. He was no longer certain of his bearings. The once distinct declivities and crests of the land had dissolved into a monotonous vista of carbonized trunks and the insidious encroachment of a verdant undergrowth, a mocking imitation of the forest's former glory. A knot of primordial anxiety tightened in his viscera as the dreadful certainty of being lost solidified within his consciousness. As the sun began its inexorable descent, painting the ravaged landscape in hues of bruised purple and ominous gray, Lucas desperately clung to the tattered remnants of his self-assurance. "I know these trails," he muttered to the silent, accusing trees, a futile incantation against the encroaching dread. But the dwindling luminescence and the increasingly alien environment gnawed at his confidence, each shadow a potential harbinger of unseen horrors. With the advent of nightfall and the precipitous drop in temperature, a primal urgency seized him. He must act, and act swiftly, before the forest claimed him entirely. His first instinct, a flicker of atavistic memory, was to conjure fire, a fragile bastion against the encroaching darkness. He gathered what appeared to be desiccated brush, but the recent tenacious regrowth had saturated everything with a clammy moisture. Despite his frantic efforts, the spark refused to ignite, the promise of warmth remaining elusive. Now, utterly enveloped by an oppressive darkness and a growing bone-deep chill, his garments damp and clinging from his futile exertions, Lucas cast his gaze upon the skeletal remains of the burned trees. Their stark silhouettes, grotesquely elongated by the spectral moonlight filtering through the skeletal canopy, transformed the once familiar realm into a phantasmagoric landscape, pregnant with unseen menace. Sometime during that first interminable night, a sound pierced the suffocating silence. In the distance, a subtle rustling, a disturbance of the unnatural stillness. A fragile tendril of hope unfurled within him, perhaps a deer, a benign denizen of the woods. But as the sound drew nearer, a profound disquietude supplanted his nascent optimism. He fumbled for his flashlight, its beam cutting a meager swathe through the inky blackness, and two luminous orbs reflected back at him, burning with an ancient, predatory intensity. He recognized the telltale gleam, the cold, unwavering stare of Felis Concolor, the mountain lion. While he had encountered these creatures before and knew their general aversion to human confrontation, the fact that this one lingered at the very periphery of his light, an unblinking sentinel in the gloom, was profoundly unsettling, a harbinger of some unseen dread. The wan light of morning eventually seeped through the skeletal branches, leaving Lucas in a state of utter exhaustion, his limbs leaden, his throat parched and raspy. He had, in his initial hubris, neglected to pack water, assuming his excursion would be fleeting. The faint murmur of a creek, a siren song of salvation, drifted up from a nearby canyon. He resolved to descend, his gaze constantly darting over his shoulder, a primal fear whispering of the unseen predator that might be trailing him. Reaching the creek brought a new, ignominious challenge. He possessed no vessel with which to draw the life-giving liquid. Thinking with a desperate ingenuity, he removed his sturdy hiking boot, the leather cold and damp against his skin, and used it to scoop up the cool, clear water. The sheer absurdity of his predicament did not escape him, a bitter irony in the face of his mounting desperation, but necessity, that cruel mistress, dictated his actions. The subsequent days dissolved into a monotonous cycle of waking to find himself covered in the dew-laden detritus of the forest floor, his makeshift blanket of leaves offering scant protection against the encroaching chill, his body a symphony of aches and pains from the unforgiving earth. Each dawn brought a fragile renewal of resolve. Today is the day. Today I unravel this labyrinth. Today I escape this cursed place. But the insidious nature of being utterly lost, adrift in a landscape stripped of all familiarity, began to warp his perception, to play tricks upon his weary mind. Several times, his hope would surge at the sight of a distant shape, a fleeting resemblance to a known landmark, only to be cruelly dashed as he drew closer, revealing yet another indistinguishable, charred monument to the forest's demise. The mountain lion remained a constant, a silent, spectral presence on the periphery of his dwindling awareness. He would catch fleeting glimpses of its tawny form during the day, a shadow amongst shadows, and at night, the subtle rustle of its movements, the soft pad of its paws upon the fallen leaves, became a chilling lullaby. It never attacked, never overtly threatened, merely observed with an unnerving patience. In his increasingly isolated state, Lucas found himself engaging in one-sided dialogues with the unseen creature, a desperate attempt to rationalize its persistent presence, perhaps even to silently plead for its departure. Upon receiving the news that Lucas was missing within the treacherous confines of Big Basin, the local constabulary immediately recognized the perilous nature of the situation. Since the devastating fire of 2020, they had witnessed a disturbing surge in reports of lost hikers, the ravaged landscape having become a disorienting labyrinth, a testament to nature's brutal indifference. Swiftly, a large-scale search operation was initiated, a desperate endeavor involving nearly 300 souls from the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office, CAL FIRE, the Boulder Creek Fire Department, and state parks personnel. However, the sheer expanse of the park, 18,000 acres of largely homogeneous terrain, a monotonous expanse of devastation and nascent regrowth, rendered the task akin to searching for a single lost leaf within an endless, blighted forest. By the 8th day, he teetered on the precipice of collapse. A clumsy fall on a rocky incline had left him bruised and battered, his body screaming in protest with every movement. The insidious tendrils of hypothermia began to tighten their grip, his thoughts becoming clouded and indistinct, moments of stark disorientation more frequent and terrifying. He began to question the very fabric of his reality, the line between waking nightmare and tangible existence blurring with alarming rapidity. The mountain lion's unwavering presence fueled this growing uncertainty. Could the same creature have been his silent stalker for over a week? It seemed an impossibility, a grotesque figment of his increasingly fractured mind. Yet he would hear it, the soft crunch of leaves, the almost imperceptible snap of a twig, or catch a fleeting glimpse of its tawny form through the skeletal trees, confirming its continued, unnerving vigil. It was as if he were trapped within the confines of his own unraveling sanity, the beast a tangible manifestation of his mounting despair. Desperation, a raw and primal emotion, finally overcame his stoicism. He began to call out for help, his voice a hoarse, cracked whisper that was swallowed by the vast, indifferent silence of the ravaged forest. Finally, on the 21st of June, the 10th day of the agonizing search, a sliver of hope pierced the oppressive darkness. Around 3 p.m., a search team, weary and disheartened, heard a faint, almost ethereal sound, like the desperate cry of a distant soul. The voice was so weak, so attenuated by distance and despair, that its precise origin remained elusive. Drones, equipped with specialized auditory technology, were deployed, their mechanical ears straining to triangulate the faint plea. At approximately 7:30 p.m., as the last vestiges of daylight bled from the sky, 2 park rangers, their faces grim with the weight of their protracted search, located him. Lucas was slumped against the base of a fire-scarred redwood, his clothes torn and caked with the grime of his ordeal, his hand still clutching the useless comfort of his flashlight. His first utterance upon their arrival was not a cry of relief, nor a testament to his miraculous survival, but a question, whispered with a desperate urgency. "Did you see it? Did you see the mountain lion?" For Lucas, however, the most profoundly unsettling aspect of his ordeal was the utter and irrevocable transformation of the landscape he had once believed he knew with an intimate certainty. The inferno had not merely scarred the surface of the land, it had fundamentally altered its very essence. The familiar landmarks erased, the well-trodden trails vanished, even the very acoustics of the forest warped into something alien and disorienting.